One more verse. Perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
That was Travis playing a song for us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third episode, I'm still looking at the board, of Armed for Recovery, Tools for the Family, sponsored by Able to Change Recovery and Serenity Detox. This is our friend Travis. He's playing a song for you. And today we have a special guest. We'll say Chuck. Chuck is here today. And so we're live right now. Feel free to comment, share. If you can't listen live, it will be archived and able to be at your listening enjoyment, viewing enjoyment at your leisure. So, thank you, brother. And maybe you can close us out at the end or something. Are you taking off?
No, I'll be here.
And what's that tattoo right there?
This
I always
right
forget
here?
that one. Is that what's that one?
Trinity sign.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
The colors are red, blue, and purple.
Beautiful.
Because in the eyes of God, we're seen as royalty.
I like that.
Yeah.
I believe that. Thanks, man.
You're
Cool.
welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So this is, come on in, Chuck. This is our guest today, Chuck Smith. I'm still a little unsure with the anonymity part. I'm saying Travis. I'm saying Chuck. I'm Dominic. Thank you for joining us. This is our third episode. And today, 2 weeks ago, we talked to John, the founder of Group Halo, and the nonprofit, and the person who put this whole thing together. Our producer, Charla's here also. We talked to Dave last week. There's Charla. I'm trying to encourage her to interact more when I miss things. We normally do this at 11 a.m. We're switching to 3 p.m. right now. And because of that, I have a napkin because I get warm around 3 p.m. I realize my personality type likes to do things in the morning. Otherwise, I have anxiety waiting for the 3 p.m. hour because it matters to me. So I'm learning that it's okay to have anxiety because it just means I care and it matters to me.
Oh, good for you.
You like that?
Yeah.
So I've known Chuck for 35 years now. He's one of the most amazing human beings I've met. And he's a good friend. He, how I would describe Chuck is, I met him, he was a pastor at the church I started going to when I was 10. And it developed into a very big South Orange County church. I won't say mega church, but, and at a certain point, Chuck kind of went away from that and still pastors in Dana Point, a much smaller group. I don't know if it's a lot of them, but I know the times I've gone. Oh, I say a lot. I notice comes in a lot when I rewatched it. Forgive that. There's a lot of recovery and spirituality are very tied together, I find. And this specific Friday, that's a stick that fell. We're just going to call things out live as they happen. These are focused on not necessarily, these episodes are focused not on the addict, but on family members of addicts, friends of addicts, people who have addicts in their family, people with mental illness, and how addiction and mental illness work together. They are very hard to differentiate sometimes, how addiction and mental illness work, how family members work, how codependency works, all these. It's a very complicated, layered issue, and to use the words of 2018, we're going to try and unpack this kind of stuff for you in these video podcasts, Facebook live streams. Chuck is... I'm still trying to figure out what this is. I had a really good 2 weeks, but I realized that I'm still trying to define what this is. We know we're here to help you. We know we're here to give you information. We have our Group Halo bag, which is full of all kinds of tools. If that's something you want, you can go to grouphalo.org. Is the bag like actually in front of me?
Right.
This is a bag that John put together. It has many and varied things to help you. If you're brand new at dealing with someone who's in addiction, who's just getting out of a rehab, and you have no idea how to help your family member who's an addict, there's a lot of tools, and this is something that we offer. It's free. It's called the Bag of Hope. I started realizing that there's a good number of people, I'm sure, who will be tuning in who are aware of how to deal with their addicted family member. They already know not to offer them a beer or a joint or something that might help them relapse. At the same time, there's still so much struggle and so much confusion and many things that have kind of plateaued, and I would like to go a little deeper into the nuances. I myself am no stranger to the fight. I have addiction in my past. I have mental illness in my past. I have friends and family who are addicts. So I myself find that I constantly, it's something that goes very, very deep and then probably is a life's pursuit. So I wanted to bring in Chuck because Chuck is someone who I listen to weekly, and he is a thinker and someone who explores things from both sides, and I thought it would be really valuable for us to talk to him today about his life, the people in his family who he's dealt with who are addicts, and he himself, where he is in his own life. I'm assuming we're gonna go there, be honest, and things of that nature. I don't know why I said that word, but sure. So this is Chuck Smith.
Maybe it would be good if I explained a little bit of how I'm connected to all of this.
Great.
Because it's not just, I had an interest in it one day and I started reading books or something. I have 5 children. My oldest kind of led the way for 2 of his siblings. My oldest got into all kinds of drugs. Remarkably, I mean, he did just about every drug known to humankind without ever becoming addicted, which sounds really strange.
It was interesting. I'm friends with all of Chuck's kids. Yeah, it never grabbed him.
Yeah, he'd try something, and he'd try just about anything if it was offered to him, but he didn't do anything consistently. Now, maybe that's part of being attention deficit. But my middle son eventually became addicted to meth. And he relapsed into meth 2 times, and his life went way downhill because of that. And then my daughter, she's a story. My daughter became addicted to heroin. She was incarcerated.
How old was she?
Okay, let me see. She was like
She was a teen, right? Oh, she was.
23, 24, yeah. She went to jail. She was busted with her boyfriend with possession of heroin with intent to sell. And it's all very innocent, for her to hear her side of the story. It was, well, we have friends in South Orange County, and they knew we were going up to Long Beach to score. They said, could you get some for us? So they have enough, and they're basically dealing. So
it's a very minimal amount that they decide is intent to sell too. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very seldom is it intent to sell. It's like, no, this is kind of what I need for the day. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So when she got out of jail, she was also remanded to rehab homes, and it was a tough one, and that she survived that is significant.
Do you remember how long she was there? 30, 60, 90, 6 months, a year?
6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah, so 6 months of jail, 6 months of rehab.
Okay.
And she told me later, she said, Dad, the whole time I was in jail and the whole time I was in rehab, the predominant thought in my mind was, when I get out of here, I'm going to get so loaded. I mean, she wasn't, let's say, broken off from the habit yet.
Is that true? I mean, do you think she really?
Oh, yeah.
Because I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But I also know your daughter, and I'm very surprised that still was.
Yeah. Well, when she got out, right away, she got a kick butt sponsor, and she stayed in the 12-step program, which she was introduced to while she was in rehab, and her sponsor really rode her hard, and so Karen began to build strength, doing the day by day, and committed herself to it. Now, this is 10 years later, and she just graduated from Vanguard University with a degree in psychology.
It's really amazing. We're friends on Facebook, and I remember 3 years ago, I adore Karen, and she was in recovery. She had said, I'm going to go back to college, guys. I remember liking it. And then literally 3 years later, a week ago, she's like, I'm graduating college, and it just really blew my mind.
Yeah.
Not just how fast time goes, but that it's just amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Congratulations, Karen, if you watch.
Yeah, but that's a really important aspect of recovery to get a hold of. People go into recovery, some to save their lives. I mean, basically, the destiny of an addict who stays addicted is death. That's where that road ends. So people get into recovery for lots of different reasons, but I don't think you can get into recovery just to get to sobriety. I don't think that's a big enough goal. I mean, honestly, once someone's sober and you're back into life, you have to face all the stuff that was there when you left, and it's piled up while you were gone. See, like Karen, she had a high school degree, no college under her belt. She's now in her 30s, and finally she gets her degree, which she could have done 10 years earlier if she hadn't been derailed by drugs. Right. So, in other words, when you get into recovery, pretty soon you hit all the reasons why you don't want to be sober, why you want to run and hide, why you want to self-medicate, why you want to escape.
Yeah.
So it has to be a bigger goal. It has to be a fuller, richer life. So that's why I think it's significant that she decided, this is what I want to do. I want to go to college. I know another young woman who's just beautiful. This is the other way that I got involved. Is a friend of mine asked me to, I think it's step 11, to do step 11 in a sober living home.
I thought his name was Steppy Levin. Okay,
yes,
right, okay.
Right. And that is through prayer, meditation, seek to improve our conscious contact with God in order to know His will for our lives, which I think is great. Establish a conscious contact with God as we understand Him. And it's great because the goal is not so I can ask Him for a bunch of things and He'll give them to me,
right.
but just so I can know what His will is for my life. So I was going in there every week and leading a time in meditation. So we talked some beforehand and hang around, talk to different clients afterwards. I really loved it. They're all in their early 20s.
Was this in South Orange County?
Yeah, except this young woman who, I think she was 34 at the time, and she was just adorable. She had a degree in philosophy and a degree in business, which makes sense because we can do the degree in philosophy.
Right.
And she was falling down drunk. But she knew when she was in rehab, when I first got there, I think she had 3 months to go. She knew she wanted to be a hairstylist. And to me, that was incredible because she was obviously brilliant, but she knew who she was.
Right.
And the other degree she got for her dad,
Yeah.
becoming a stylist, she did for herself. But because she had that before her, I think that she could see there's a better life and there's a better track than the one I was on. If you can't see that, if you go from, let's say, a clinic right back into the same setting, you've got several things working against you. One of them is it takes a while for your head to clear up. You know, you've got 30 days maybe before you're thinking clearly, maybe another 60 days before whatever you're doing is completely out of your system.
And that's just the actual substances and chemicals, let alone the neural pathways that have like hardwired you towards certain behavior.
That's it. That's another part of it, Dominic, is when you add chemistry to your brain, and it already makes that chemistry itself, but just in tiny amounts. When it gets overloaded, it says, well, we don't need to produce any more of this.
Right.
So when you stop taking drugs, you have the little chemical factories in your brain that say, well, we don't need to produce any oxytocin. We're shut down. These factories are shut down.
Right.
So it takes a while before you can feel up again.
Yeah, and that's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
Right.
You're with a group of people, everyone's looking at the sunset, they're all, wow, isn't that wonderful? And you're just numb.
Yeah.
You can feel down, but you can't feel up. So here you are, you're facing life again, all the challenges of before, only now you don't even have the resources that you had before, for some time until that, rehabilitates itself. And then you got hope.
The woman who knew she wanted to be a stylist, she got the degree for her dad, she knew she wanted to be a stylist, that is amazing, because how many of us are actually doing what we love to do?
Right.
And are confident in that. And because once you are, and you fully love what you're doing, that art, what she can do as a stylist, is going to be magical. It's going to be powerful. It's going to transcend, like a chef, like an author, like anyone.
Yeah.
And so it brings me to actually want to understand, and maybe just how did it, you can't know, but why did your kids become addicts? I now am married with 4 children. I'm an addict in recovery. I understand. I understood everything about why I did what I did. But now that I'm a parent, oh my God, my poor mother. My father passed away when I was 20 and or 21. So and I had addiction before that, but it was high school and it was safe-ish. But in my 20s, when it came back, what I put my mother through was terrifying now that I'm a parent. And I'm raising my kids to the best of my ability daily, failing every minute too. Looking back, is there anything that people can look at in their own families? Is there anything, you know what I'm asking? You're Pastor Chuck, you have 5 kids, you're an awesome guy. Why did they become addicts?
Okay, I'm going to take a leap out there. This isn't really something you can generalize, however.
And I hope you guys, I understand that, right?
Okay, but it might begin as you know, it's just a kid who's got an adventurous spirit and doesn't have a whole lot of personal boundaries. It's like, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll give it a try. But when it gets to the point of addiction, it is self-medicating. I'm doing this because I can't face life without it. I'm doing this because I get so anxious in certain situations. I'm doing this because it makes me a friendlier person. It makes me more easygoing.
That's what it was for me. The first time I used it, I finally had a freedom I'd never known existed in life. First time I didn't care what they thought of my shirt and my pants. Right now, I'm a mess of body issues going like, do I look fat? The way my brain is cycling right now as we speak. When I would use, it would just be gone.
Yeah.
And it felt so good just to be what I thought was normal for once.
It felt so good. My daughter Karen told me, Dad, the first time I smoked heroin, it felt so good. And when she said that, something in me said, I want to feel good. I lived through almost 40 years of depression, like this mild state, you know, low grade depression, with every once in a while like clinical episodes of, you know, suicidal ideation, all that stuff like that. And I mean, I can remember the last morning that I woke up happy. It was in December several years ago. So I mean, like, you know, it's just not my normal thing. When she said it felt good, I thought, well, good grief, no wonder it's so hard to resist.
So
If I
why
know
didn't
instantly-
you? Why didn't you?
Oh, well,
Was it just fear? Like just terrified you'll, I mean, like, why did I and why didn't you?
that's a good question, and I really can't answer. I mean, I was raised in a different era and a different home. I mean, when I was in, but this is weird, when I started high school, we knew about marijuana, and we knew that people like in the inner city, like in Santa Ana, were probably smoking and using marijuana. That was as a freshman. By the time I was a junior, I didn't know anyone in my Newport Beach high school that hadn't tried marijuana. And, you know, several people were already dropping acid. And
Because this is the 60s now, right? Yeah.
yeah, so, you know, so there was that transition, but I was already out of it. I never had a drink. When I was,
Oh yeah, you didn't.
Not until I was 42. I'm going through a divorce. And then I had my first Corona, but
It was amazing, wasn't it? Yeah, no.
well, not that amazing actually.
Anyway.
It didn't taste as good as Coca-Cola. But, you know.
So I'm realizing now as we're speaking, yeah, you're not an addict, and you really can't speak on where I thought you might go. I know you know that in 12-step they talk about, one of the things that latched on really for me when I was involved in 12-step was the spiritual whole, that most addicts are very spiritually inclined people. They are deep thinkers. They are looking for something more real. They have already seen through the facade of life, and it's spiritual yearning that they are looking for when they first try a lot of these substances. And so I understand when they decide to get sober, or their life puts them in that situation where sobriety is now happening, latching onto that higher power does fill that hole that they were always looking for. But it's also not as basic as that, obviously.
Right.
But I guess I want to say to the family members and friends of addicts, they're amazing people that have very thoughtful spirits, and spirits that are very in charge of their lives, and put in the right direction, they will be the most amazing people you know, and you birthed them for reasons, or they're your siblings for reasons. They're awesome people, and I guess I wanted to get a little bit away from that. There's something wrong with them, that they're. I know it's a disease, but in a way, there's a freedom almost to being an addict, because if you can find the solutions, you can finally live a life that is, you know, that maybe other people will never see. because life isn't that bad for them. They don't really go that low or that high, and they kind of just live in a mediocrity in their life. That's what addicts kind of hold on to feel good about themselves. That's what I should say I did for myself.
Well, well, I don't know how controversial you want to go with this, but I'll just throw it out there that some addicts have moved from addiction and from drug use to recovery and maintained recovery through spiritual experiences, like in using DMT.
Ayahuasca, DMT, that doesn't necessarily go in line, I think, at this point with the 12-step programs.
No.
But at the same time, I think anyone who is looking for solutions will eventually see that as viable and something that, because it gets to the core.
Yeah. Now, one time I asked the clients at the sober living home where I would lead the meditation, I asked them about DMT. Now, their knowledge of pharmaceuticals just blew my mind, because I mean they knew far more about what was behind the pharmacy counter than I will ever learn. But several of them had tried it. So in their situation, I asked them, was it a spiritual experience? And each one of them said, oh yeah. But for them, it wasn't a step out of drugs. It was just one more thing to do and one more thing to add to their list of experiences. So it's not, an absolute, and it's not necessarily something that you can guarantee.
No.
This is the way out.
I think like anything, if it's done, I mean, the conversation we're having right now is just a conversation, but if you do it with consciousness, I guess, and with intention, then the possibility is there.
And I'd say with competent guides,
Sure.
and professionals, because anytime you're using something like this, you have to be very, very careful about
Can you guys go back and explain what DMT is to our audience?
So I have been through 12 steps over a course of a lot of years. My father's from South America. He's from the country of Bolivia. He's half Incan, half Quechuan Indian. And before he passed away, he had always told me that him and I were going to do this experience called ayahuasca. And it's an indigenous tribal medicine from the Amazon. It's used as medicine. But it's a powerful drink. It's a plant and a vine.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's a plant and a vine among the thousands of plants and vines. Somehow these two mixed together have the ability to make this, it's a drink, and it's a powerful hallucinogen, similar to the Native Americans' vision quest. And when you would come of age, you would drink ayahuasca to discover who you were and your purpose to the world and your relationship to God. And recently, in the last 10 to 20 years, for people who still are struggling with addiction, who've tried everything, they pilgrim down to South America, and there's clinics set up for sobriety to do a series of these journeys to try and find it that way. And they find that the recidivism rate is, for relapse, is remarkably low. Here's my ums again. So I did that. I don't talk about it too often in these kind of settings, but it's the kind of thing where you might see yourself, like let's say I'm a heroin user and I did ayahuasca, it might show me myself at like 60 years old and I'm hunched over in a little coffee house washing dishes. And it's like, there's no judgment to it, but it's kind of like, this is where you're going to be if you continue on this path. Do you want to change? Change is always possible in life. So DMT is what the ayahuasca at its core is, and it's very interesting. It's actually like a DNA molecule if you look at it chemically. So there's this whole idea that life itself kind of is in these plants sometimes. It's very controversial, especially with 12-step groups, and it's not something I encourage. If you're involved in 12-step groups, if you're addicts involved in 12-step groups, do what's working. If you have someone who's tried everything and they're of that percentage, this is something that's also out there, and that's what he was speaking on.
For you, I mean, you were a spiritual quester anyway. You were already, looking to develop your understanding of the universe and of.
Chuck's known me since I was 10. We used to go to these retreats in Catalina with the youth group. And I was that 10-year-old kid that got baptized in the ocean in Catalina and came up speaking in tongues. I was always a very strange and mystical child. So I am inclined that way. I love who I am. It's a little bit lonely sometimes. But I accept who I am. My father wasn't traditional. So when I had a psychotic episode as a result of using drugs when I was 20, instead of putting me into a rehab or an institution, he held me to himself and just stayed with me until I had leveled out. And that's when I reconnected to Chuck. I was a junior high youth pastor at his church, and we would work together. So for me, I've always had a little bit of a different situation. The thing I've always taken for granted is 12-step. It's there and it's always available. So I always knew. 12-step was like mom, mom's always there. And so I've never utilized 12-step the way, and then I've always been envious of the people who really take it on. It's a very challenging program. Those steps are divine.
Well, see, now, that's another thing that needs to be pointed out. I had a personal assistant who was like 20 years in recovery. She was a 12-step, she was my daughter's sponsor. The 12 steps are her spirituality.
Right.
And she's tight with God. She knows God in Jesus Christ. So the Christians who say you don't need 12 steps or the 12 steps aren't biblical or whatever, like there's a lot of old grouches around who make complaints about things they don't understand. But for her, I can see the solidness of her faith and of her life in God, and the solidness of her recovery. She's constantly growing, constantly moving forward.
Yeah.
And so, when the 12 steps do work for a person, and they have worked more successfully than any other program that we know of.
Right.
When they do work for a program, then, for a person, then they're excellent. I started to go to Al-Anon. It's for families, which I think is a wonderful thing about Able to Change, is giving tools to families. Because my tendency would be to do everything that was wrong. And it was my instinct as a dad who loves his children. So, my one son who was, using meth, he came by one time, he had lost a lot of weight, he looked terrible. He hadn't eaten for 3 days. And I thought, we've got a spare bed in our house. I can go buy him a burger right now and feed him. And if I don't do that for him, he's going to sleep on the street tonight. And I knew that. And I realized for the first time, I can't do anything for him. It was paralyzing. It was heartbreaking. I thought, he's going to sleep on the street. He could die tonight, and I could have offered him a room. And when parents are faced with those kinds of decisions, it's easy to collapse and to say, let me help you. And then you're helping them to stay addicted one more day. When I went to my first Al-Anon meeting, they had the newbies introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Chuck. And I mentioned about my daughter, Karen, being in rehab. And I said, I know that when she gets out, she's going to immediately have car insurance that she has to pay, a car payment that she has to make, that she won't have a place to live, she needs work. And I'm thinking, if I just pay off her indebtedness and get her to zero, that this would help her. This would be a great help to her. And right away, everyone's saying, no, don't. You can't change it. And this woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I know exactly how you feel. I felt the same way about my daughter. She said, but I realized that if I stepped in and helped her, that I was telling her, I don't believe you're capable of doing this yourself. So I'm going
like
to
that.
do it for you.
I do like that because I was gonna, and I still am gonna, and I want to not stop. I want to look more at that because I didn't have tough love. Maybe almost to a fault. My mom always gave me the money.
I knew she would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, your mom's one of the greatest mothers and persons that I know.
yeah, and I'm grateful that that was my experience
Yeah.
and that I was able to do it that way. So what I want to ask you is, because this is something I still don't understand, and now I'm raising children, I don't understand tough love. I'm not saying I don't believe in it, or I just don't understand it. And so what is that? Because I also know, if it's okay to say, that at one point, this is one of my most heroic stories I loved, you went to the Bay Area and pulled Karen out of a opium den. So there were times. How do you know when and when not to engage with the addict? What have you found? Because there's times when you really do need to be there for them.
Right.
And then there's times when, like you said, you're not helping them help themselves.
Right.
How the fuck do we know that?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest with you, but I'll say this, that there are people who do know better than we do.
Sure.
Because they've been in addiction, they can read the addict much better than we can.
So is it a person-to-person basis sometimes?
Oh yeah, it's going to be person to and event to event. And I was fortunate to have a man in my life who was a close friend who would help me. In fact, he did an intervention for Michael, and he gave me lots of wisdom for Karen. That really helped. But this brings us to a really important point, and that is that addiction is a family disease, and that we, even when we think we're doing the best thing for them, we can be doing the worst thing for them.
Right.
And we don't know how to give the addict space. Like if they move back home and they start to get sober, we don't know how to measure boundaries in space, and sometimes too many boundaries, and we're adding pressure. Sometimes too loose, and we're giving them too much freedom. It has to be event by event.
We're skipping around. I hope that's okay with everyone. I realize I really want to simplify it, and it's not simple. I think it's a nature, especially with the conversations we have, to just want to do a black and white. This is always the case. That's always the case. This is how you fix an addict. We should probably turn the AC off.
The addict is a person.
Yeah. And then also, I guess I was going to say, and then the fact that it's always recommended, if you are a family member or have a friend in addiction, that you might look into Al-Anon for yourself, which are the same 12 steps. Because you have an addiction to people, I guess.
Do it.
But you tell me, because I'm not Al-Anon, I'm AA. So what is Al-Anon? I mean, it is that, though.
Yeah, do it.
We're all kind of in the same soup.
Well, we all have similar needs. We have behaviors we need to break in order to succeed. And I'm of the opinion that everyone has an addiction, and that we live with them. And I mean, we have habits, we know about that, and some of them are bad habits, and we should, break them. And some of them, might even be healthy addictions. But I think it helps to be aware of them and to acknowledge that. But with Al-Anon, you get to know the addict. You get to know the addict, the addicted mind. It really is helpful for that. And then you have others who have been through it, which helps because you feel so alone. I would not say that I've ever practiced tough love with my kids.
Right.
I would say what I practice is heartbreak love, because I realize I'm at a point where all I can do for my child is pray and ache. And the pain inside when you see your child addicted. I remember Karen, after she was busted in court, and the judge was brilliant. I thank God for him. But she's in that cage, and she looked like this strange street person, desperate to get in touch with her boyfriend, and having to be told several times because she wasn't getting it the first time. She wasn't even hearing it. She was so like obsessed. You know, she was still like, you know, kind of going through withdrawals. So, but the judge said, "Where are your friends that you've been doing drugs with? I don't see any of. Or can you identify any of them in the court today?" And he said, "That I imagine that your mom and dad are here. I imagine that, you know, other people who love you. These are the people who really care about you." And but caring about her, I was dying inside at the same time.
Yeah, so talk to me just for a second about that surrendering process. I don't want to do that with my children. I won't do that if that's how one of their lives go.
Yeah.
I'm so angry at you right now because these
I-
are our babies, right?
And how could I do that with my little girl? You know, how
Right.
could I shut the door on my son? Michael probably spent more time with you than any of my kids. I mean, you know, he really looked up to you. So yeah, how can I do that to these wonderful
Yeah,
people?
and, you know, I'm being facetious, but yeah, but this is part of just parenting in general. Right? I don't want to give her up on her marriage day. Like I can already see that part
Right.
with my beautiful daughter, you know, and these 3 amazing sons. And
Well, hopefully, you know, my
well, I don't know, they're kind of probably stacked against him.
well, you know, my daughter Jennifer
Mm-hmm.
and my son Scotty never went into addiction.
Right.
You know, Jennifer is just always pretty much a good girl, and Scotty enjoyed marijuana for a period of time.
Sure.
Had a dirty test that cost him a job, and stopped completely. He told me several months later. He said, "Dad, my head is so much clearer." He said, "I'm so glad to not be doing that anymore." But for him, it was like, you know, it was like a drink at night to go to sleep type of thing, you know, calm down after a stressful
Yeah.
day. But and I'm not saying that to justify it. Yeah, I was happy though to see Michael go from meth to marijuana, you know, as a stage in his recovery. And again, I don't think that there's any one program that's going to work for everybody. So as many tools as we can get,
Right.
especially as many tools as parents and other caring relatives. Sometimes it's an uncle, sometimes it's a sibling who's just like, you know, rooting for, you know, their brother or sister's recovery. Whatever tools we can get to help us and to have a credible guide to walk with us. Those things I think are paramount.
So if someone right now is at the beginning of this journey, they literally have just found out their loved one is an addict, they're coming out of rehab. Where did you go first to take solace? Where did you go to first try to center yourself? I mean, did you do that? How did it break? How did you even find out she was an addict?
Okay, let me say this. When did I start to take actions that were effective?
Effective, okay.
Because a lot of what I did just wasn't effective. And how did I know? Well, you know, honestly, I was blindsided by Will. He did a lot of stuff I had no idea what he was doing. I was a really easy person to deceive.
Right.
One, because I didn't want to believe my son would do that kind of thing. And I wanted to believe him when he told me his stories. I said, okay. But, you know, several nights when the doorbell rings in the middle of the night, and I think he's in bed and he's standing on the front porch with 2 sheriffs, you know, you start to learn. With Karen, it was one Saturday, And I said, "Oh, Karen." She goes, "What, Daddy?" I said, "You used marijuana last night." "No, I didn't." "Karen, you did." She goes, "How do you know?" And I said, "Because you're always a bitch the next day." And she said, "Oh." She's kind of, she didn't know that there was that telltale. So, but when I
Did she appreciate that in the moment? Like that probably didn't.
You know what?
Did that almost put a smile to her face? Like
Yes.
yeah, right?
Yes, yeah, because she knows.
It kind of cut through it all, right?
Well, she knows that I don't use language like that,
Sure.
and I wouldn't just refer to her like that.
Right.
And I probably said, "You're always bitchy" the next day. But when I began to get effective was when I went to a friend who did interventions, and began a dialogue with him, and he was just brilliant. And for him, when he did an intervention, he did not have a playbook. He didn't have a list of questions. He first met with the family. He gave us the 411. He said, if I ask you, politely to shut up, then shut up. Okay. Because what you're doing is working against what I want to see happen, what we all want to see happen, which is an education in itself. If I'm saying something, "But son, blah, blah, blah," and Jeff says, "Okay, Chuck, now shut up," then it alerts me to, I'm doing something wrong. And I thought I was making so much sense. I was being so logical and rational.
Yeah.
And here's someone who doesn't need logic and reason right now.
Yeah, that's what I found when I was, they think they're,
Okay, Dominic,
there's a huge fixing quality that
yes.
tends to come, and those roles, I don't know that they work out very well.
They do if it's, "Dad, can you help me get my chain back on my bike?"
Sure.
And when they come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm thinking about making this investment. What do you think about these kinds of investments?" That, when they ask for it, and you have it to give. But if I realized when Will was like 16, I realized, I only talked to this kid to instruct him. Every time I talked to him, "Well, what you should have done, Will.
Yeah.
Well, how it should be." And I realized I wasn't listening to him. Like, who is this kid? Because he was really a different person than myself. I had to tell him when he was 30 years old, I gave him a call. I said, "Hey, Will, when you were born, I was so stoked. I've got a boy, I've got a son, and you were going to be a better version of me." Because I was gonna give you all that I had without any of my mistakes.
I would never do that to my children. Right.
So, I'm trying to make him meet. Well, I said, "You resisted me from the time you were 2 years old. I mean, literally. And you resisted me all the way through. And, okay, Will is very outgoing. I'm introverted. I'm shy. One day, he's like 12 years old. He's with his friends. It's dinner time. I go to get him. We're walking the green belt through our neighborhood back to our house. And some guy's out in front of his house. The garage door's up. He's got a grill, and he's, got something on the grill. And Will, it's like 2 or 3 houses down. Will yells, "Hey, what you cooking?" I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He says, we don't know that guy. Why are you talking to him? What if he comes over and beats us up? I mean, like, I don't know what I'm thinking, but it's like, this is like way out of my comfort zone. The guy says, "Steaks," and Will goes, "Oh, put one on for me." The guy says, "Okay, you got it." I mean, it's just like, jovial, kidding around. And I'm walking away, and I feel like, I don't know if it's shame or what, I feel like really embarrassed, but I feel really proud of him.
Yeah.
This kid, he did that so easily. It's so natural. So.
And and just fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, we could do that. And then you're talking to people, and then you're eating a steak and having fun, and that can be life too.
I just went on the scariest roller coaster ride. I'm kind of exhilarated by it.
Yeah.
So he's 30 years old, and I said, "Well, you did not turn out anything like me, like the person I wanted you to be. I had mine. But you're so much better than anything I could have imagined. And you're a better man than I am. And I just really admire you." And I felt like it was necessary to do that. For all those years that all I would do is try to straighten him out and instruct, and like you said, fix.
How is Karen, she's different now. I mean, like, she's the same. But okay, for me, I man, life. I'm succeeding in life the way I want to succeed. Always could use more, but and I could live in regret of the 10 years that I lost. I don't. At times I do. My resume would be that much thicker, but there was so much for me in what that was. I'm not going to take away my life's journey. For her, is she more powerful than you could possibly imagine, kind of thing? Was it a big transformation? Was it a rebirth?
Okay, this is my own philosophy. This goes to my beliefs. All right, I don't think that God wastes anything in our lives.
It's perfect.
Yeah, yeah. That whatever we bring to Him, whatever we go through, whatever we do, good or bad, God's response is, I can work with that. So He doesn't let it go to waste. It's an education. You're developed as a person in certain ways. There are discoveries. I mean, the street smarts that she has as a result.
And her compassion for other addicts.
Her empathy.
Empathy.
Yep.
Her ability to be effective with other addicts.
But on the other hand, she is a different person. I mean, like, and that's something that families have to realize, that this kid who just, cussed you out and threw something at you and slammed the door, this is the drug. This isn't your child. This is the drug that's doing this.
Yeah.
One other thing for you, Stephen.
How are we doing, Charlotte?
It's almost time.
Okay.
Okay.
We got like 5 minutes.
Okay, regarding your children.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. But I know what I would have done differently. I would have been much more rigid about their friends, because none of my kids just went out and did this by himself or herself. They had Karen's introduction to opium was after a funeral of a friend who had overdosed, and this kid told her, it's not addicting, don't worry about it. And I would have been much more, observant of their peers, because that is a huge factor.
How do you tell?
You read them. You read the best you can. You make some mistakes.
True.
A fake will get through the gate sometimes, but usually they reveal themselves.
Yeah, those Eddie Haskells are out there. Yeah.
Eddie Haskell, exactly. Hello, Mr. Cleaver.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Was it the relation? Was she attracted to?
No, it was not a physical attraction at all. It was a friend who said, Karen, this will help the grief.
Okay. Yeah, because for me it was my own wanting. It was my own. Now someone did introduce me to it. Wow, it's interesting. I don't know that I've ever really thought about the.
Well, do think about
specific.
it.
Yeah.
And think about if your dad had said, you're not hanging out with that guy anymore.
Huh.
If that would have made a difference.
It's 2018. Things are very different now than when we were teenagers and when we were growing up. Knowledge is there now. There's plenty of. There might be almost too much knowledge now. The addiction isn't going away. This is in our DNA as humans.
Yeah.
It's.
No, it's getting worse.
Yeah. At the same time, the possibility, we see it work too. It works. AA was developed in the 1920s, and that program still works in 2018. So is there anything you want to say here at the end, I guess? Words of encouragement, some final thoughts, we're obviously, these are discussions that are never going to have endings.
Yeah, I would say don't give up. If you have an addiction and you've been in rehab after rehab, still don't give up. You don't know when the miracle is going to happen for you. If you're a parent, don't give up. And sometimes you just think, I've had it, that's the last time they're going to do that to me. And your heart's been broken too many times, but don't give up. If we can just hang in there, the miracle will come.
And hanging in there doesn't necessarily have to mean just waiting for something. There's a lot you can do for yourself, right? There are groups out there, and that's what this is about, trying to connect everyone to each other. I'm very grateful to Group Halo for offering this format. Because I do think we might not be able to fix the other person, but we can always work on what's happening inside ourselves. Unfortunately, that never ends.
We can change the family dynamics too,
Yeah.
which will be a help.
It's funny, when one person does change and has vulnerability finally come out, how much it does shift.
That's right.
When we all just decide to do something a little different than what our normal role is,
Yep.
it really does help a lot. So, so we'll be here again next Friday. Thank you, Chuck, for coming out.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to do this. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to Able to Change Recovery. Thank you to Serenity Detox. If you want a bag of hope, again, go to grouphalo.org. Thank you, Travis, for playing the guitar, and Charla for producing. What else should we say? Every week I really want to delve in these kind of conversations. So they're going to change, and if there is something that you're uncomfortable with or that feels controversial, feel free to comment. We're just learning as we go here too. We're fallible human beings. At the same time, we care. So thank you for tuning in. Share this too if you'd like. That's always helpful. And again, this is available forever to watch whenever you like. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah,
Great.
my pleasure.